That's why I love doing this,
Yeah.
because we get the opportunity to reminisce about
how you helped the Korean Peninsula avoid a nuclear holocaust. Hi, welcome to the latest video on the channel. Today, the World Cup in 2002. Craig was designer for Nike for the product at the World Cup in 2002, 20th anniversary of that this year, and I am going to be speaking to Craig about a big part of his design history.
Yeah.
And Subside Sports have very kindly kept hold of every shirt that Craig designed for that tournament, specifically waiting for this day that we could sit together and go through it.
Kind of before I get into that, I've got to say how excited I am to do this. I'm almost crying because I've never seen some of these kits since the World Cup. So, to actually see them all in front of us, in one respect, it's amazing. In the other respect, I'm thinking, really, did I design the neckline like that? But we'll get into that.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'm going to ask you a few questions through this unprepared. So we're going to be getting spontaneous answers.
Yeah, cool.
And we'll see where we get to. So the first obvious thing that most kit fans of the era will know is this was a 2-layer shirt. Yep. So how did that come about? Wasn't that counterintuitive for how hot it was going to be out there for the tournament?
No, not really. Basically what you're talking about was cool motion. And we're going to be lucky enough to have Tina Grace with us in another video that we're going to do, who was, if you think of Tina like the engineer that was behind all of the products that we see in front of her. Myself and Tina worked on Cool Motion, and we believed that there wasn't going to be the generic football kit solution in such a hot country. We'd spent time over in Japan and Korea. Now, bearing in mind, the players that were going had to acclimatise to that as well. So a lot of the European teams were going to this event, and it was going to be pretty tough for them. So the whole idea with the 2 layers was to move air around the body. But again, Tina and myself can talk a little bit more into that.
Yeah, totally. One thing that leaps out is the saturation of colour. So obviously the bright ones like Belgium and Brazil, Nigeria stand out. But then even with the Portuguese one, it's still a super saturated, rich colour. Yeah. So was that just purely determined by the federations, or was that a conscious decision?
No, it's actually quite an interesting story. And it actually starts off with the Netherlands. Holland, as you well know, didn't actually make it to the event. But they were the starting point, because when I was working for Nike, I worked in Hilversum in Holland, which was where all the kits were designed. And I was out in Amsterdam and we'd been clubbing. I was just a young lad. And as I came out of the nightclub, I was actually presented a flyer for the next gig. And I was just mesmerised by how bright this orange was. I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I was at that point in my designs where I'm thinking, I need to put some colour into this. And as I was looking at it, I was thinking, God, that's massive. That's so cool. And that's where the phrase coined massive colour. Yeah. And I'd had such a good relationship with Louis van Gaal. When he then became the manager of the Netherlands, thankfully he went for that colour. Yeah. Unbeknown to me at the time, they didn't qualify. Yeah. But that was the catalyst to everyone else going in that direction. So as you say, when it came to Brazil, who is traditionally that canary yellow, isn't it? Yeah. We just wanted to lift that bar. So we went with this kind of neon colour, which we then put into as many of the kits as we can. Then Belgium, again, another great colour. But it was interesting because as you go through colour design for the World Cup, one thing that a lot of people might not know, you actually still have to design kits with the notion of black and white TV. Because believe it or not, there's still lots of people out there that have only got access to black and white TVs. So we had to do a test that when the kits were on black and white TV, they didn't collide with each other. And at the time, because Holland didn't qualify, we didn't have the issue that we would have had if those 2 teams had played with each other.
Oh, yeah.
As a designer now, a creative director, 50-odd-year-old, it's amazing to think I actually did that coming out of a nightclub and thinking, I'm just going to put that on Holland. It's just bonkers when you think about it, but that's what's brilliant about being a designer. You kind of create the future. Yeah.
Speaking of creating the future, this South Korea shirt, I'm not a massive South Korean history buff, but I feel fairly confident that they probably hadn't worn this colour before 2002, which, as the hosts or the co-hosts of the event, must have been quite a big deal, proposing it and then getting it accepted by the public and the press.
Honestly, I've got to give a shout out to Matt Tressarden, who actually still works for Nike. Matt and myself came up with this concept of uniting South Korea and North Korea together. And we thought...
And you asked me not to talk about politics on these videos.
But it was great because we actually thought as a couple of designers that, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had this united graphic that bring the two nations together, which it was obviously never going to happen. But the reality kicked in and it was all about the unity of South Korea. But the long and the short of it is, yes, we changed the colour, which was a big deal for them.
Yeah.
But they were so susceptible to it. They were brilliant. And it was the first time that they had the white tiger and a crest, because normally they would play in the badge.
And was that designed within Nike, or was
yeah,
that
it was a
Federation?
partnership between the Federation and Nike.
Right.
Which was great. Then when we were designing the kits as well, we worked quite closely with the localised Nike team there. And one of the things that they brought to our attention was the fact that the Koreans liked protection around their neck. Mm-hmm. So they liked the collar. And at the time, I hadn't really considered the collar so much.
Yeah.
And I think looking back at it, I'd have probably designed it a little different to what it is now. It's just like a little
token gesture.
Yeah, it's like a little floppy lump.
Yeah.
So the collar went on, but in the event itself, they just became superstars.
Yeah.
And I remember I got invited over to do a presentation to the Korean national team, or at least I thought it was a Korean national team. So I'd been all over the world presenting to the USA, to Portugal, to the various different teams. And literally it was a 3-day trip. So flew in, got into the hotel, which is where the presentation was happening. And as I've walked downstairs, there's what can only be described as the biggest inside stadium I've ever seen in my life. I'm thinking, holy shit, this is big. So I'm looking around thinking, right, where's the Nike pods? And they're like, what are you on about? You're it. I'm like, what? So it was me on my own. So I've gone in there, got mic'd up, looked like Madonna.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know at the time was not only was I presenting to the Federation, 200 of the fans, plus all of the football team. So there's about 2,000 people sat in this thing. So I've come running out. There was bands on, there was like drums and all sorts going on.
Did you have to take a penalty like Diana Ross?
No, thankfully not, because I'd have only screwed that up as well. So I've come running out and started presenting. I don't know what went through my mind, but I decided to wear this bright pink V-neck jumper.
Wow.
And I looked like I was actually wearing one of the kits. But so anyway, so I did this whole presentation and it was great. Players were signing the kits.
Yeah.
But then the next morning, I've gone to check out of the hotel and there's people actually coming up to us asking us for my autograph. And there I am. It had actually gone out live that evening.
Yeah.
And I had no idea, and I'm so glad that no one told us, because I would have absolutely cacked myself. But my God, what an experience. And then I was getting phone calls to do interviews asking us, oh, what was it about the colour, and it's brought unity to the nation and all this sort of stuff. That's why I love doing this.
Yeah.
And that's why I love Subside so much, because we get the opportunity to kind of reminisce about
how you helped the Korean Peninsula avoid a nuclear holocaust.
I'll tell you what was interesting. You know, I often get asked, why did you use that template, and was it a conscious decision? And to be honest, it was, because at Nike, their philosophy is form follows function. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I hold in my own design world. If you are going to do products for athletes, it's got to be built around their sports, and it's got to aid their performance in the game. So the whole concept behind this was air was coming into the garment, and these exit areas were allowing the air to circulate and move out, whether it was coming in at the sides or leaving the sides. But that was the whole concept behind it. It was kind of the technology that was creating some of the aesthetics. But at that time, I don't know, I was just a really gutsy designer, and I just wanted to do something really different.
Yeah.
And that's why it looks so aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, I think kit collectors and kit fans talk a lot about templates, almost as if it's, well, I guess it is for a lot of the brands, that it's just, here's what we've designed and we're going to roll it out across everybody. Whereas certainly with this, it's here's what we've designed, and technically it's the best thing it can be. Yeah. And therefore it's got to go on everybody. So it's not so much about, well, it's just the visual that we want to purvey, or it's going to save us money if everyone's in the same kit. It's like, it's a Formula One car. Everyone gets the Formula One car.
Absolutely. And to be fair to Nike, they hold that philosophy even to this day. They find the best solution for an athlete, and they try and accommodate everybody in that. Yep. But what's interesting, if I can just open this one, which is actually the USA. Okay guys, that's the end of part 1. Tune in for part 2, which is going to be coming next. Cheers.
See you next time.
You might also want to check out Chat Shirt for some of his little cheeky anecdotes.
Anecdotes.
Right, f*** it, I'm not saying that.